Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head back to Sweden once again, and we're going to return to my home county of Skåne in the very south of the country. Now we're returning to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. These guys were of course one of my local breweries, and if people were to ask me about them, I would say that they are very solid all round, but they're probably best known these days for their different IPAs. But the beer that we're going to have a look at from them today is a style that I've had from this brewery several times before. It's a style that I really enjoy and one that I know this brewery can do really well. But the thing that really excites me about this one is that it's a kind of new and amped up take on one of their classic beers, which really was what hooked me on this brewery. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to head back to Sweden. We're going to go to Skåne in the very south of the country. We're going to go to Malmö to be precise, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Hyllie Bryggeri. So this particular beer is called Dubbel Hyllipan. It comes in at 8.2% ABV, and this one is a West Coast Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So a good few years ago, I reviewed the original Hyllipan when they were bottling their beers, and that must have been, what, about 2018, 2019? Something like that. And yeah, I really just loved that beer, a really proper old school West Coast IPA. And I've had it a few times on tap since then, and it just always is a little bit nostalgic for me. But when I was back in Sweden in the summer, I saw that they now had a Dubbel version of this, so I'm really curious to try this one and see what it's going to be like. This is one I picked up at the Hansa Systembolaget store in Malmö, and yeah, you can probably find it there. They actually had this one on tap as well. In the tap room when I was there, but I resisted trying it because I wanted the video to be my first reaction to this beer. But yeah, as I say, really excited to try this one, a bigger version of one of my favourite beers from Hyllie Bryggeri. This, the original Hyllipan along with the Skånsk Lager, I think are ones that you really need to try from these guys. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Hyllie Bryggeri before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Swedish playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to quite regular at the moment because I did bring back a good number of Swedish beers with me from a trip to review here in Hong Kong, and hopefully we can keep that regular flow going. But make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Hyllie Bryggeri once again then. So, Hyllie Bryggeri, as I've told you before, started off as the homebrewing experimentations of Michael Nathorst, who is from Vintria, a few minutes to the south of Hyllie, in the kind of southern part of Malmö. But for a number of years he was a home brewer, and he built up his own brewery in his garage where he was experimenting with different beers and brewing with his friends, and apparently he started home brewing back in around 2013. So he worked for a number of years in the plumbing industry, and for a period of time he was working 4 days a week as a plumber, then 1 day with the brewery. And he's also good friends with Torsten Ekne, who was the original owner of Beer Ditch in Malmö, which is a very good beer bar, and I do recommend you check it out. But basically, when Michael started to talk to Torsten about his beers, Torsten encouraged him to go properly commercial with it, and so he decided to officially register Hyllie Bryggeri as a company in 2015. These days though, Michael is joined at the brewery by his wife Annika, who is the CEO, and she deals with the finance side of the company, but there's also Erik Fritihoff, who is a partner, and he deals with the sales and marketing side of things, but originally he was one of the founders of the Great Swedish Beer Festival. But a little bit later, in 2017, they launched their Psychopipes brand at Brggeri, which is quite a well-known beer festival these days up in Helsingborg. Again, I recommend that you check it out. Hopefully I can get there next year. But at Brggeri, they started releasing their more experimental beers through this Psychopipes brand, but I'm not sure if they still have this brand actively, in all honesty. But in 2019, Hyllie Bryggeri along with Limhamns Brggeri collaborated to form a new company that owned a brewery building, and it was there that a couple of the companies were, I think Seabarps Husbryggeri might have been involved in that as well, but it was there that at least a couple of the breweries were brewing their beers. But they had a 1,000 litre brew kit, but unfortunately this arrangement only lasted for a few months before they moved into a farm near Fintria, because this agreement just really didn't work out for them. But throughout 2020 they were contract brewing a number of their beers, but they invested in a new premises in Malmö on Stormgatan near Malmö Central Station, and this was converted into a brewery with a 2,000 litre brewing system. But they also brought in Johan Lagerkrantz as their head brewer, who'd spent the previous 5 years in New Zealand, where he was working for a couple of breweries, 8 Wired and Deep Creek, to name a couple. But they opened their Stormgatan taproom soon after, and the brewery was they've opened the taproom soon after the brewery was up and running, and they've added a bistro space around the corner in more recent years. But over the last few years, they've continued to expand their fermentation capacity and upgrade the brewery's infrastructure. They've upgraded the taproom as well. It's pretty big these days, I have to say. But they have produced, as of September 2025, when we're filming this review for you, around 190 different kinds of beer, and there's about 40 or so have been released under the Psychopipes brand as well. But I'm really not sure whether Psychopipes is still done, or if that's kind of gone out the way and everything is being released under Hyllie Bryggeri these days. But yeah, like I said to you, for me, probably my favourite beers from this brewery would be Skånsk Lager along with the Hyllipan, the original version of this West Coast IPA. So those are two that I would really recommend that you check out should you get the chance. But these guys are very, very solid brewery all round, so have a go at some of their stuff for yourself and just see what you think. But I really like their stuff, and it was quite cool to have these guys as one of my local breweries when I was based in Lund. But I'm sure there'll be a local brewery to me again, because we will be going back to Sweden at some point in the next few years. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Hyllie Bryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a wee look at the beer itself. You can take a breath now. But yeah, the artwork on this one is kind of similar to what we've seen from the new version of the Hyllipan, the one that's in the cans, of course. This one, of course, just says Hyllipan twice on it. The bottle that I reviewed a number of years ago, of course, will look a little bit different. But yeah, plain silver top on it. It's a 330 milliliter can. This, you can see on the top there, that is one of Hyllie Bryggeri's symbols there, and yeah, you can also see that on the back of the can as well. And it tells you a little bit about the beer on the back there. It says, our beloved flagship IPA in an even more intense double version as a celebration to 10 years on the shelves. So yeah, that's pretty cool. But yeah, I do have another darker beer from these guys to look at in a future video, so you'll see that fairly soon, I would think. But yeah, very nicely presented, this one. As I say, I'm just really curious to try this, because like I say, they had it on tap when I was in Stormgatan over the summer, but I didn't want to try it because I had this can to review for you here on the channel, and from what I gather, this can was pretty fresh at the time of purchase. So yeah, let's just get it out into the glass and see what we have. So there we are. To see, it looks very, very nice upon first pour. So yeah, let me just line that up for you there. But yeah, anyway, before the head disappears on this one, yeah, you can see that it's poured with about just over a half finger of quite a soapy, perfect white head there. Some smaller bubbles on the surface of the liquid there, then it gets a little bit soapier the further up that you go, but there's a wee bit of a kind of bubbly head just kind of floating away on the top there, but that will fade away very quickly to be a thinner, more foamy layer as well, I would say. But yeah, I have to say this beer does look very, very nice. So as you can see, it is a lovely kind of pale golden straw colour, I would say. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, the length of your wort boil plays a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well, but you don't often have to care about that when it comes to the IPA style umbrella, in all honesty. So yeah, a little bit of natural haze to this one. But I don't think this has any wheat in it. Sometimes, oh no, there is a little bit of wheat in this one, so that will account for the natural haze that this beer has. So let's actually talk about some of the technicalities of the West Coast IPA. So for the most part, a West Coast IPA will use barley malt in its malt base. It's not unheard of to use like a little bit of wheat or a little bit of oat in the malt base, but yeah, for the most part, it is barley malt that's in these beers. New England IPAs use a lot more wheat and a lot more oat, which is why they're quite big and hazy. The other thing I would say about the West Coast Dubbel IPA, other than the hopping, which we'll get to later, the other thing about these beer styles is that for me there's two ends of the spectrum. You've got the more kind of bready, biscuity end of the spectrum, which is, for example, like Pliny the Elder from Russian River Brewing, and you've also got the more oily, caramelly spectrum, which is more akin to like Sierra Nevada Torpedo. Those are the two kind of benchmarks of the West Coast IPA style for me, in all honesty. And just going by the colour of this one, I think this is going to be a more kind of bready, biscuity offering. But as you can see, there's not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. If I wipe the condensation off the side of the glass, yeah, it does confirm that there is that little bit of natural haze to the beer, probably due to the presence of the wheat. But yeah, as I say, not a lot in the way of visible carbonation coming out of this beer. But all in all, I think it looks pretty nice, in fact. Yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about the technicalities of the style or the appearance of this beer. The only other thing I would add about this one is that I remember the original Hyllipan used the US05 yeast strain, and it also used I think Citra and Mosaic, or Simcoe and Mosaic, if I'm not mistaken. It was one of those combinations of hops that it used, so we'll see what we get out of this one. But yeah, we've said everything we need to about the technicalities of the style, the appearance of the beer, and the facts about this beer itself. Let's go on and have a wee look at the aroma of this one then. I'm very, very curious about this, so let's do it. Oh yeah, I'm going to say straight away, this is pretty damn nice, and it's quite nostalgic and old school, I would say as well. But I will say, it smells a lot kind of cleaner and more refined than I remember the Hyllipan being, even the kind of newer version on tap. So maybe they've sort of cleaned the beer up a wee bit and kind of modernised it and things like that, in honesty. But yeah, it still has that more old school, nostalgic West Coast IPA feeling, which is something I've really missed in the beer scene over the last wee while. Actually, the West Coast IPAs have been making somewhat of a comeback over the last wee while, but yeah, this one I think will be properly old school, so keeping my fingers crossed for that. But yeah, the aroma on this one gives you everything you'd want. So you've got that nice kind of bready backbone, a bit of kind of brown sugary character coming out of it, big oily fruits, and then the big green component to it as well. So let's just break that aroma down then and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth before we actually taste the beer. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's German crystal malts that will be in this one as well. There's just something very familiar about that. But yeah, the backbone of this beer, you've got a lovely fresh white bready bread crust in there. So yeah, lovely fresh white bready bread crust, little touch of woody character out of it as well. Yeah, fresh white bready bread crust, little touch of woody character. You've got some Jacob's cream cracker in there as well. On top of that, there's a wee bit of a more wholemeal brown bready kind of character out of it too. Yeah, wholemeal brown bready character in this one. fluffier white bread as well, as I would say. And the bread it's got a little bit of sweetness to it, but it's also got that little bit of crispness to it, and it's that makes me think that it's mostly German crystal malt that's in here. So yeah, wholemeal brown bread, sweeter white bread. Then on top of that, you start to get the kind of brown sugary side of the beer. So for me, the brown sugary side of this one, it's got a little bit of toasty caramel to it, but then on top of that, you can also smell like quite a bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit. There is straight up caramel in there too. Then you've got that more oily, concentrated, yeah, you've got that more oily sort of concentrated McVitie's digestive biscuit syrup coming out of it as well. So yeah, the way that goes together in this one, I think, is really, really nice. So yeah, the way that pieces together, I think, is very classic and very kind of old school and West Coasty. So yeah, this one for me, it is a more kind of bready and biscuity leaning West Coast IPA, which is what I thought it was going to be based on the original Hyllie Pan and the colour of the beer, and it's certainly kind of showing that in the aroma, that's for sure. But yeah, the yeasty side of things then at the back of the nose. So for me, the yeasty character in this one's quite interesting. It's got a fair little bit of yeah, it's got a fair little bit of a more kind of wholemeal brown bready character at the core. There's some fluffy white bread to it as well, but I'm getting a wee bit of like a crackery and more bread crusty type note out of this one as well. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together in this beer, I have to say, I think is pretty awesome as well. So that gets a big thumbs up from me too. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else we really need to say about that aspect of this beer, in honesty. I think we've covered the malty and yeasty side of the beer pretty well. So yeah, I think we can go on to the hoppy side of things then. So yeah, when it comes to hopping an IPA, there's 3 different hopping methods you can use. There's early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour or so of the wort boil. That gives you the vast majority of your bitterness and a much deeper, danker green component. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place within the latter half hour of the wort boil. That gives you a wee bit of bitterness and a very kind of bright green component, if you like, and it gives you mostly kind of flavour and aroma. But then yeah, you've got late dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That's all about flavour and aroma, and again, it gives you a very sort of bright green component as well. So yeah, just bear that in mind when you're looking at your IPAs. But yeah, the thing is, the New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping. That's why they're kind of softer and more juicy and less bitter, whereas the West Coast IPAs use all 3, which is why they're deeper, danker, and more sort of oily on that hoppy side of things. And you can certainly get that out of this beer. So on the hoppy side of things then, for me, I would say this one, I think, there's a little touch of earthiness to it. I want to say it's Simcoe and Mosaic that's in this one. There's just, again, it's something that's ingrained in my memory there, but also just kind of some of the notes that are coming out of the beer. But yeah, for me, there's a little bit of earthiness to the green component. Lovely floral aromaticity. Also a nice little bit of a zesty, kind of grassy character that comes out of it as well. So yeah, nice floral aromaticity, a little bit of zesty grassiness, as I say. And I don't know, there's maybe a wee touch of pine resin to this one, but not a lot, in all honesty. The earthiness is one of the things that's making me think there's a little bit of Mosaic in this beer. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything else really to kind of say about the green component in this one. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, for me, there's a nice kind of big oily passion fruity note to this one. And again, like I say, there's something that's telling me that there's something in memory that tells me there's Simcoe in here. It could be Citra, but I'm pretty sure that it's either Citra or Simcoe plus Mosaic. I'm thinking there's just something that makes me think that's the hop combination that's in this one, both memory and from what I'm getting from the beer. But yeah, there is a wee touch of mango to it, but passion fruit, apricot certainly, maybe a little bit of pineapple, and yeah, quite a bit of sort of tangerine orange to this beer as well. So that's quite an interesting point to make about this one for sure. Yeah, I don't know, there's maybe a wee touch of lime in there as well, but yeah, mostly tangerine orange. And I think that was the first part of the fruity character that really jumped out of the beer at me, in all honesty. It's that big sort of tangerine note. So yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the aroma of this one. I'm quite excited to try this, as I say, both from nostalgia purposes and just from what I'm getting out of the beer. I'm a sucker for a big orangey leaning West Coast IPA. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. That's always half the experience when it comes to craft beers and whiskies and sakes and stuff like that. But yeah, let's go for it with this. So this one is the Dubbel Hyllipan, an 8.2% West Coast double IPA from the wonderful Hyllie Bryggeri in Malmö in Skåne, in the very south of Sweden. So yeah, let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. So yeah, I'm going to say straight away, it's really, really nice. Very, very smooth, very slick, and quite a nostalgic West Coast double IPA, this one. But I will say it's kind of easygoing in a way as well. But the bitterness does build into the aftertaste with it, so it gets a big, big thumbs up from me. Yeah. It does. It's interesting because it does feel a little bit kind of cleaner and a little bit sort of more slick in things than I remember the original Hyllipan being. But obviously, it's quite a bit more boozy. If I remember rightly, the original Hyllipan is like 6%. Could be a wee bit less than that. But yeah, this one for an 8.2% is dangerously easy drinking, to be honest with you. But you do get that kind of punch from the flavour, I would say. But yeah. Gets a big thumbs up from me, this one. I really like this. So I will say it would be a shame if they only did this for the 10th anniversary. It would be good to see them do this, you know, even once a year or something like that, like a sort of seasonal beer or something like that. But yeah, let's break this beer down then and describe it for you more in depth, as we always do. So yeah, the backbone of this beer, for me, if we go to the middle third of the palate first, backbone of the beer, you've got that lovely, fresh, white bready bread crust in there. As you move further forward from that, there's a little bit of a more, yeah, you've got a little bit of a more kind of woody character coming out of it. And then on top of that, there's a kind of smattering of Jacob's cream cracker. These these kind of flavours are what I always get from the backbone of these beers, especially when you've got the German malt there, which I heavily suspect is the case here. But yeah, on top of the Jacob's cream cracker, there's a layer of a more wholemeal brown bready note coming out of the beer. So yeah, there's a more wholemeal brown bready character to this one, sitting on top of that. And then yeah, there's a fluffier, fresher white bready note in there, which it has a slight degree of sweetness to it, but yeah, it's also got a little bit of kind of dryness and crispness to it, which I also really quite like. So yeah, the way that goes together is really nice too. So yeah, layer of wholemeal brown bread, which has a wee bit of sweetness to it, and the fluffy white bread above that, which has a wee bit of crispness, but also that wee bit of sweetness. Then the next layer up, you've got a more, yeah, you have got a more kind of toasty, you've got a little bit of a more toasty brown bready, sorry, a little bit more of a toasty brown sugar. It's almost like you've got a circle in the middle of your palate there. So the bottom layer of that circle is like slightly toasty, if you like, toasty brown sugar. Then as you kind of go to the next layer up, it's more like a kind of sweet, crispy McVitie's digestive biscuit. As you move further in, there's a little touch of an almost kind of honey type character. Then the dead center of that middle third of your palate is where all the kind of boozy side of the brown sugar is kind of coagulating, if you like. So yeah, the boozy part of this beer is very much in the middle third of your palate there, and at 8.2% ABV, yeah, it's yeah, it will give you that little bit of kind of punch, we can safely say that. But yeah, I think that covers the middle third of your palate in this one, in all honesty. So let's go to the back third of your palate. And as I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back, and between the middle and back third of your palate, you're going to get very similar flavours, but just at different intensities. So yeah, border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there. You've got the brown bread in the base, the fluffier white bread on top, then a wee bit of a more kind of crisp note in there as well. But then, yeah, the base of the back third of your palate, you get the white bready bread crust, which is a little bit drier, of course. Then on top of that, you've got the more kind of Jacob's cream crackery sort of note. The next layer up, you've got that fluffier, fresh, brown bready kind of character. Then, yeah, the fluffier white bready character sitting above that too, which is really nice. And then, yeah, the next layer beyond that, you can feel some of the kind of the sort of toasty brown sugar and a little bit of the kind of more crispy biscuit character just creeping over the top there. So yeah, the way that that all goes together in this one, I think, is really, really nice. So that gets a big thumbs up from me as well. Yeah. So, I think that covers everything we need to say about the malty part on the back third of your palate. But above everything else on that back third of your palate, you start to get the yeasty side of the beer. And there is something a wee bit old school about the yeasty character in this one. I don't think it's US05. It might be one of the other really old school ones like Safala or whatever it was called. Or Safi, I never knew how to pronounce that one in honesty. And there's something very familiar about it. I don't know if the US05 yeast will do an 8% beer actually. I don't know if it works that well at that level of ABV in honesty. But still, it feels that little bit familiar. But still, the yeasty part of this beer, at its core, it's like a more kind of grainy and dense wholemeal brown bread. Then it's surrounded, the little bit around it is a little bit more of a kind of fluffier, it's got a wee bit of a more dense white bready character, than the very edge of it is a little bit more of a kind of bread crusty. It's got a little bit more of a kind of bread crusty, toasty bread crusty character around the very edge of it too. So definitely, yeah, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of compresses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really nice in this one as well. So yeah, don't think we need to say anything more about the yeasty and malty side of the beer. So let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. The hoppy side of this beer is quite similar to how I described it from the aroma, and kind of what I expected, to be honest. I would say this is one of these beers where the aroma and flavour kind of, they really sort of, the flavour really gives you what you would expect from the aroma, we can really say that. But yeah, in the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, there's a wee bit of a herbally kind of woody sort of thing going on, and then yeah, as you push further forward from that, there's a wee bit of pine resin underneath, but there's a little bit more of a floral aromaticity coming out of the beer. So yeah, it's a little bit spicy in a sense, but at the same time it's quite oily. Then round the front curve of your tongue, you've got a bit of that lighter, more kind of grassy note out of the beer, but it's quite like a wet, freshly cut grass, I would say. I think that's a good way to describe this one in honesty. Yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about the green component. So let's go to the front third of your palate then and talk about the fruity side of the beer. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. There's the kind of wholemeal brown bread in the base, the fluffier white bread on top of that, and then yeah, you've got the base, the front third of your palate there, where you've got the white bready bread crust in the base, the Jacob's cream cracker, the brown bread, the white bread, a little bit of the McVitie's digestive biscuit, and the kind of toasty caramel. And then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, that goes together nicely. So the fruity side of the beer, it's kind of what I was expecting in honesty, but you know, as I say, I think Simcoe and Mosaic in this one. I think that's what they're doing with this. But yeah, I would say at the back of that oily bubble, if you like, there's a little tiny touch of a kind of grapefruity note in there, something like that. But then yeah, as you move further forward, there's that oily passion fruity sort of thing, which I would associate with Simcoe. It doesn't feel quite complex enough to be Citra, in honesty. But yeah, there's that oily sort of passion fruity character. As you move further forward from that, there's a wee touch of apricot, maybe a little bit of pineapple sitting on top of that, but I would say yeah, passion fruit and apricot for me. But as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, it's all about that big sort of tangerine orange. So yeah, the way that this goes together, I think, is it's really nice in that sense. And there's maybe a wee touch of lime just behind the very front tip of the tongue when the fruits mix in with all the grassy esters. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really quite nice. Yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about the fruity side of this beer, so that really rounds off what we need to say about the flavour of the beer overall. So for me, it's a kind of, the fruity character is very well balanced, a bit tropical and a bit of more orangey note, but I think the orangey character really comes out more into the aftertaste, and some of the floral characteristics and the bitter side of the beer pushes out a little bit more too. So yeah, interesting stuff. But yeah, let's look at the mouthfeel then, just to round off this review. For me, this beer is kind of top end of mid-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got that lovely sort of oily slickness that you want from a West Coast IPA. Because it's a Swedish beer as well, it's very, very clean. I've often talked about the quality of Swedish water and Nordic water in general. You'll always get very big flavours from the Nordic beers, but you can still tell there's like a sort of cleanliness to the water in these beers. When it comes to the IBUs in this one, what would we say? I think this one's maybe about 70-ish IBUs, 80 at most. I don't think it's higher than that, in all honesty, but yeah, 70, maybe 80 IBUs. It's not going to blow the head off you like some of the old 80, 90 ones is, but 90 or 100 IBU ones would. But yeah, there is a fair little bit of bitterness. This one, I want a bit of bitterness in a West Coast IPA, in all honesty. The malt base, like we said, it's a bit drier underneath, smoother in the middle, then there's a bit of an oily, slick sweetness on top. And then yeah, you've got a lovely, juicy, oily, fruity character coming out of this one. So yeah, this beer, I would say, I really like this one, and I hope they continue to do this sort of fairly regularly, if not as a regular brew, because it is very, very good. And you know, I miss the West Coast double IPAs, I really do. So yeah, I think this one is a nice reinvigoration, modernisation, if you like, of the original Hyllipan. And yeah, it's dangerously easy to drink for an 8.2%er, in all honesty. But yeah, a proper old school West Coast double IPA, this one. I think Simcoe and Mosaic in this one. I would be very curious to know, I have to admit. So yeah, give this one a go if you get the chance and see what you think, and do go and visit Hyllie Bryggeri's tap room on Stormgatan. It's like a 2-minute walk from the central station if you find yourself in Malmö. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Hyllie Bryggeri as well. But do make sure you check out this brewery, Skåne Lager, Hyllipan, if you can get this one. It's also very good. But yeah, in the meantime, check out my social media, check out Hyllie Bryggeri's social media, and have a go at some of their beers. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and thank you for watching the review. This one was the Dubbel Hyllipan, a West Coast double IPA, 8.2% ABV from Hyllie Bryggeri in Malmö, Skåne, Sweden. Ciao just now.